Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. We have a full show this week. We will not be cut into by the Campbellsville Lady Tigers. They'll be playing on this here station on Thursday night, I believe it is, 4:45 p.m. You can tune in and catch that. We got 3 local players on the team. Bailey Pettigo starts as a point guard for the Campbellsville, but then if they're running away with the games, a lot of times Elizabeth Bertram and Ashanti Gore will get in there. Plus, they got a ton of other players just from Monroe County and Allen County, all kinds of players from this general neighborhood, which is why we're running them on our station these days. But we're going to start off by talking about high school basketball this week, John. Critical 15th district games, they got postponed. They were supposed to be played on Friday, and they got postponed because of the weather. There's not a makeup date that I've seen so far for those games that were postponed. So we actually ended up with kind of a light schedule, even though it was supposed to be a packed schedule last week by the time it was all said and done. Anything stand out to you last week? We'll talk about Warren Central and Bowling Green a little bit, but let's talk about Barren and Glasgow and Caverna to start with. Anything stand out to you from last week, John?
I don't know if anything stands out. It's just you want to start with the girls or boys? Let's kind of take it that direction.
Yeah, let's start with the boys.
Okay. Well, Barren went 1-2 last week.
Yeah.
They lost at Central Hardin. Played a close game, 62-57. Central Hardin's got a pretty good team, above 500 record. They defeated Russellville. I did that game on the radio with Jay Turner on Tuesday, 71-54, and then they lost Saturday to a good Oldham County team, 53-45.
That may have been the biggest team, like height-wise, I've seen this year at Oldham County. They had a bunch of tall dudes on the team.
A big 6'10" kid out there, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think their starting point guard was about 6'4", 6'5", and he was just a sophomore. He was pretty tall himself.
Right. So, it kind of – it's a similar theme with the Barren boys. They have, again, struggled to score, or I think score is one thing, but to shoot the ball well has been probably their Achilles heel. A lot of out-of-region teams, to be honest with you. I think they've only played 3 teams in the region: Warren Central, Russellville, and Allen. And Monroe. I'm sorry, they played 4. So everybody else has been out of the region. Central Hardin was a close game. Went all the way down the stretch. I think Mason Griggs, I'm trying to remember, had a good game. He had 21 points for the game. Aiden Eichen had 10. But as a game in which we didn't shoot the ball very well, I believe I right against Central Hardin from the free throw line. And Central Hardin had a kid that I think his name was Davidson. Maybe he had 31 points. He had half their points.
Yeah.
So, it's a tough loss, and they were easy to win up there. They played well, I thought, against Russellville the second half. It was a 1-point game at halftime. And
it's 25-24, I think, at halftime.
And then the second half, I thought they played really well. Aiden Eichen was really, really good. He had 27 points that game. And I thought he just overall played really well. I thought Tay Pointer, I mentioned on the game, didn't score a lot of points, but I thought defensively he was really, really good. And also, he passed the ball quite well. And I just thought the second half, Barren got real comfortable, got the game going up and down. Barren, they're kind of in a catch in this sense. Is if they play fast, then you run into the strengths of some of the better teams. Yeah, the Warren Centrals and Bowling Greens and Greenwood like to play fast, but I also think it benefits Barren in a lot of ways to play fast. Yeah, because they've got some, especially post players, they can get up and down the floor. Aiden Eichen, Aiden Miller, and it creates easier shots to them as well. And I thought they did a good job against Russellville getting stops in the second half and getting the ball up and down the floor and create some easy shots.
Yeah, you mentioned the play fast conundrum because you're right. You're not going to be able to outrun Warren Central or Bowling Green or even Greenwood at the moment. But it's true that Aiden Eichen and Mason Griggs, your 2 leading scorers, are really better in the open court.
Aiden Miller is too.
Yeah, Aiden Miller, because he outruns a lot of people because he's a good athlete and gets down there. Even if he isn't the person making the shots, a lot of times that puts him in the position to get the rebound if it's a miss. So, I mean, it is a catch-22 for him because on the flip side of that, they're struggling to shoot from outside once again this year. I don't know. I can't quite figure out why, because they do have people who can shoot. It's just that when that game gets all grindy, it looks like they have a hard time getting those shots to go in.
Well, and percentage-wise, it's not good.
Yeah.
They've struggled from the free throw line and from three, and it's something. It's not like it's not like they don't work on it. I mean, they do work on it. Part of it is confidence. Once you start to see a few shots go in, then your confidence gets up. But right now, there are 14 games in the season, or 7-7, and it just has not. Overall, for the most part, they've struggled to shoot. Now they have played some really good teams.
Oh yeah,
and really good, long teams, defensive teams too. And that, I don't know if part of it is just confidence wise. Maybe they need a stretch of games in which they can get their confidence up, and maybe that'll go in. Who knows? That could happen. But the inability to make consistent shots and score, it is frustrating. It's frustrating as a player too. As a team, their attitude has been really good. I got to give them credit. Their attitude has been good.
Because it does not affect their defense.
No, their defensive intensity stays high, and they're working hard. But it just in any sport you play, if you struggle to in baseball, if you struggle to hit, and in football, if you struggle to score, and in soccer, you can't put in the goal. It's frustrating because that's what players like to do. They like to either you want to score yourself, but it also makes the game flow better if your team is scoring. Yeah, and they're just having a hard time with that.
Yeah, Coach Craig Pippen a couple of weeks ago echoed one of your statements that you make a lot of times when Glasgow had won. I think they'd won 7-9 at this point, and he said. He said, "Whenever you can score, it makes everything just look better."
Yeah, it's a great. It's the great deodorant.
Yes, it is.
It does. It covers up. If you can score, it covers up some of the silly turnovers that you make,
right?
Or the miss, or the missed blockout, or maybe not the greatest defensive effort, but when you're scoring and you're winning anyway, it does cover up some mistakes. And right now, Barron's and the boys, their margin of error is really small.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Glasgow Scotties, they got in one game last week. They played Taylor County. They ended up winning the game 51-50. It was a fascinating finish to the game because Taylor County had a shot and then to try to tie it up. They were down 51-49. And Glasgow, basically, they just missed the offense. They missed the rebound on it. Taylor got the rebound back, put it back in, or put it back up and was fouled. And then the kid went to the line. I think there was 0.3 of a second left or something like that. It was like less than, maybe it's 0.8. And he went to the line, he hit the first one, and then missed the second one, and Glasgow won the game 51-50.
A lot of pressure on that free throw.
Yes. And as I was watching it, I mean, that's exactly the thought I had as I was watching that kid go to the foul line, and he hit the first one. I was like, I don't know if that made the second one easier or harder. Because, if you miss the first one, it's just over no matter what you do.
Yeah, but I think it's probably the same.
Yeah.
Because you got to make both. But give Glasgow credit; they won against Taylor playing a different way. Normally, most of their wins this year they've been in their 60s or 70s. Mm-hmm. This is one of the better wins when they only put 51, so they didn't score as easy as they have in the past. And they still found a way to win, and that's is Taylor a great team? No, but they're not bad.
Yeah.
And Mr. Bowling, one of my favorite players to watch, he put up 19 in that game. He's, just a really good basketball player.
He had a dunk in that game, a breakaway dunk in that game. And what's kind of fascinating is he's the kind of player that when he shoots the ball, you're actually surprised when it doesn't go in.
Yeah, now he doesn't shoot many threes. He's a mid-range player, 15 feet in and a lot of pull-up jumpers, and he's a driver and doesn't shoot a ton of threes. I don't know how many he's made, but I know that's not what he looks to do. They got plenty of other three-point shooters.
He kind of sets up some other guys like Poland or Ashton Sawinski, those guys when they're out there on the perimeter. Yeah. Winskoski, who actually started in that game against Taylor County, I think had a big three there in the fourth quarter that gave Glasgow a little bit of a cushion.
Seems like every time Glasgow plays Taylor in any sport, it's pretty close, doesn't it?
Well, it's all. I tell you what, I don't know. These two teams, they're in the same. These two schools are in the same district in football, and I don't know how many of those Taylor County kids were also football players. Because there are 3 or 4 on the Glasgow team. There was a little extra in that game, effort-wise, and I think intensity-wise, that just was a bleed-off from the football season. So, yeah, it's kind of a fascinating matchup when they play each other in another sport.
Well, they ought to play each other in baseball because Taylor's got a really good baseball program.
Yes, they should. I'll tell you another sport where it's always very entertaining when they play each other. It's in boys soccer, actually, because Taylor's boys are usually pretty good.
There you go.
Glasgow's boys are usually pretty good. It's a pretty intense game. So it's turned into kind of a school-on-school rivalry in the strangest sort of way because otherwise they have nothing in common other than being that football district. And they've not historically played each other in football.
True. Very true.
So, yeah, it was a good game, good win for the Scotties. Like I said, they didn't get to play the district game at the end of the week.
Moves them to 8-5.
Moves them to 8-5. As you mentioned, they won a game in a style that they typically have not won those games. They've kind of struggled to, when they don't score, they've struggled to win those games.
And I think tonight is the beginning of the All-A, right?
Yeah, the All-A Marathon. The Glasgow Lady Scotties play at 6 o'clock against Metcalfe County, and then the boys play at 7:30 against Metcalfe County. Those games are at Metcalfe County. If the boys win, they will play on Thursday. If the girls win, they'll play on Wednesday.
I think if the boys, whoever wins the Metcalfe Glasgow boys will be a pretty big favorite.
Well, you still got Clinton County in there.
Whoever wins the Glasgow Metcalfe boys will be a big favorite. I understand. Clinton's won one. Has only lost once this year, and they are good, and they really gear up for it.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, so maybe they will be a co-favorite, whoever wins with Clinton. But Metcalfe's had a really good year. It's amazing that Peyton Dial is playing basketball after suffering his football injury, but they can really score. I think Glasgow's really good. I think Glasgow has a legitimate. I really believe the winner right here will. Maybe it is Clinton. You know, I'm just surprised with the amount of players that Clinton lost from last year that they're still. Yeah, you know, this highly competitive. You know, they've got a good culture over there, but this will be a really, really good boys game tonight.
Yeah, they still have Blake Mullet Melton over there, so he's the least likely basketball player you've ever seen, who will absolutely kill you on a basketball court.
Right.
But I'm with you. You know, because I'm not. When you look at Clinton's schedule, I'm not convinced they've played that tough of a schedule. I think Glasgow's probably played a tougher schedule than Clinton at this point.
They have played Warren Central and Bowling Green.
Yes, that is true.
Nobody else has.
No, and they played against Butler and Madison Southern over there at Campbellsville, so they played a good schedule. Meanwhile, we talked about the girls, the Trojanettes. They dropped that game at Central Hardin as well. They did not have initially as busy a week on their schedule as the boys did. So
the girls have only played one game in close to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 8-4, and they played the 3 games in 2 days before Christmas. Mm-hmm. Then was off after Christmas and came back and only got the Central Hardin game in. They were snowed out for the Monroe County game. So, boy, they need to get games in. I mean, there's just so much practicing you can do, and they're on a little bit of a skid right now. Lost, 3 in a row?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
The last 2 games of the Christmas tournament, and then the Central. Now, the Central Hardin's not a bad loss. Central Hardin is arguably the first or the second best team in the 5th region.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it's them or Bardstown. Right
I mean, they got really good guards. They're quick, they're athletic, and plus Barren played without Katie Murphy.
Yes.
She was ill, did not play. And so, you know, if you're playing an athletic team without your point guard, your chances of winning are not really good. So so Barren needs to, they play Apollo tonight. I think that game would be in a better game last year. Mm-hmm. Apollo was pretty good last year. I don't know if they're quite as strong, but Barren just needs to play. They play them tonight. They got a makeup game tomorrow with South Warren at South Warren, and then they have Friday night against Russell County. So
that game was originally for Saturday, but they're playing those games Friday.
So they just need to play. They got to get back into a rhythm.
Yeah, and then we mentioned the Lady Scotties have won 7-9. Last week they beat Logan County. I thought that was a pretty good win at the time because the interesting thing, the final score of that game was 35-34. But they opened the season with a game against Logan County, and they lost 55-35. So Coach Pippin's encouragement to play hard on defense is obviously having an impact. And it goes back. I mean, they've started scoring a little better in terms of shooting percentage wise,
especially Mia Cassidy.
Yeah, especially
Mia
Cassidy.
She had half of them. She had 17 out of 35.
Yeah,
and I think her average is close to 15 a game. And, and one of the better 3-point shooters around. So yeah, I mean it's a good. Listen, Logan was 13-2, but since that game they've lost to Glasgow and Caverna, and they're 13-4. I told you, last week I didn't think Logan's schedule was that good, but anytime you can take a 20-point loss. Glasgow had a 20-point loss against Logan, and then within 5 weeks turn that around and get a win. That's a credit to the coaching staff and the players. That's a nice improvement.
Yeah. So it was a good win, I thought, for them in that sense, and they're I guess they're kind of learning how to win ugly, if you want to look at it that way, because they're not shooting the ball that much better, but they've cut down on their turnovers, and they're just playing better on defense. They're playing with more intensity on defense, and so those things are having an impact. That's helped them win these close games. They opened the season with 4 straight losses, and we talked about it then. They were doing good things. It's just that it was so hard for them to score, and they were struggling so hard to score, and they were turning the ball over in key situations that the games were more. The score was bigger than the actual competitiveness of the game.
They'll need to score tonight because they are playing probably the favorite in the fourth regional. They got Metcalf, and Metcalf has 4 of their 5 starters back. A team that was really, really good last year offensively. Now they're not quite the same. They don't play quite the same.
Yeah.
Their scoring is down. But it seems like they're defensively they're playing pretty solid defensively, but they're not scoring quite at the same rate. But it's a team that's got some good players. The Davis girl and London, and you got I've gone blank on a few others, but they've got players who've been around a long, long time, and they've also won the Class A before. Be a tall task for Glasgow to knock off Metcalf.
Yeah, especially at their place, it'll be interesting over there. But if they keep playing defense the way they have played. They got a puncher's chance if nothing else.
Sure.
And like you mentioned, Mia Cassidy's been playing really well. Ashton Botts has played well. Cadence Bird is a surprising player, I think, for people who don't really. If they show up at the Glasgow game and they see Cadence Bird running the offense out there, that might catch them a little bit by surprise. They've just been playing better all the way around, and so it'll be an interesting game. I'll be over there. I'll be going over there as soon as we get done here. We'll have coverage of those games on 104thescore.com. Real quick, you mentioned the Caverna girls beating Logan County on Saturday. I believe Kayleana Richardson had 26 points in that game. And
good night.
Yeah, she's a solid player. She had a huge game, and they're not shooting the ball particularly well, but they played defense pretty well against Logan in that game as well. But they opened the week last week. I think it was with the loss to Campbellsville, 10-point loss to Campbellsville. So that was a bit disappointing, I'm sure, because the previous meeting they'd lost by 4, and that's because Campbellsville had hit a couple of free throws at the end. So they start their 5th region All-A. I believe they're at home tomorrow, them and their boys. Whoever they play will be determined, I think, after some games tonight. I'll get all that info. We'll get it online later as well, and we'll go cover those games as well. Anything else, John?
No, I mentioned last week. I wasn't trying to be ominous and said we need to kind of get into a rhythm. You had the COVID situation, but I was more worried about weather than anything else.
Yep.
And we got struck at the end of the last week. Luckily, that weather didn't stick around. So these kids need to play, get in some games.
All right. It's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, it's Prediction Monday, I suppose, for us. We'll lay out our predictions here for this national championship game in a little bit. For those who are interested in football instead of high school basketball and do not know, may know this, but the college football national championship game is tonight, and it features Alabama and Georgia. Shocker that those two are playing each other. But Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. They beat them 41-24, I think was the final score. But that game was the score and how that game went is a little bit deceptive because Georgia was actually up 10-0, I think, early in the second quarter of that game.
I don't even remember. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying is like Alabama so decisively handled them in terms of the score and how the game looked. But it probably was not as lopsided as it looked. The bottom line is Bryce Young played a very clean game.
Well, Las Vegas does not think it was lopsided.
They don't?
Georgia, as of this morning, it was a 2.5-point favorite, even though they got beat by 20-something by Alabama.
Yeah, well, see, so I hear all these people saying, it's hard to beat a team twice, and that's only true if you're not necessarily better than the other team. And they may be right in this case because really, but they may be wrong because Bryce Young has been almost perfect in the last 2 months of the season, basically.
He's earning his salary.
Yeah, he's earning his salary. He's re-earning his Heisman Trophy.
Well, I mean, I think Coach Saban admitted that, right? At the beginning of the year, he's with the deal he made, like $1 million a year.
Something like that.
No, he said that. He told his boosters.
Yeah. No, he's earning his salary.
Okay.
He's making his NLI people very happy.
There you go.
Wise investment on their part because they've gotten a Heisman out of him, and they're probably going to get a national title out of him. But basically, in that conference championship game, the bottom line difference I thought was basically Bryce Young was nearly perfect in that game. He hardly made any mistakes. The quarterback for
Stetson Bennett,
yes.
Walk on.
Threw 2 interceptions. One of them returned for a touchdown in the second half. That was really the icing on the cake for the game. But other than that, the game was dead even statistically and that kind of thing.
Sounds like you're leaning toward Georgia.
Well, I wasn't until I started researching this game, but I'm still not necessarily because here's the thing: Stetson Bennett has been mistake prone in several games this year. It's just that Georgia's defense is so good it usually does not bite them.
He played well against Michigan.
Well, he did, but then again, Michigan maybe shouldn't have even been there. Am I being harsh, John? Is that harsh there?
I don't know. Maybe they shouldn't. I don't know who else should have been there.
I don't know. Pick any random person that Georgia could have beaten up on. It didn't make any difference, I guess is my point. Yeah, he played well against Michigan, but Michigan couldn't do anything on offense against Georgia's defense, and so once again, he could have thrown 3 interceptions, and it probably wouldn't have made a difference because Michigan's offense was just absolutely incapable of moving the ball or scoring against Georgia. So I don't know that that's any kind of measurement for his performance there. But he has not necessarily played well against better teams. But here's another thing, though. We look back, and this is kind of funny. Alabama survived a game against Florida. Florida was not really very good. They survived a game against LSU. LSU was not really very good. They survived a game against Auburn. Auburn was okay. Probably the best of those 3 that I just mentioned, you think?
Lost to Texas A&M.
They did lose to Texas A&M, and that's one of the few games Bryce Young was not necessarily pristine in. And so he threw a couple of interceptions, I think, in that game. And Texas A&M, I think, scored, not off the interception, but I think their score, not to win the game, but the go-ahead score.
Again, it seems like you're going to go with Georgia.
I don't know, John.
I mean, you're laying down all the facts for Georgia. Yes,
but my gut tells me do not pick Georgia.
Why?
Because I have no faith in Kirby Smart or his coaching staff to beat Nick Saban in a critical game. How about that?
Okay, all right.
That's how I'm feeling about it.
Okay.
What do you think?
I don't have all those facts that you're saying. I don't know. To be honest with you, if you want me to just be 100% real right here on the radio, I don't really care. I'm not, I just don't. I'm not excited about this game. I'm excited that the season's over.
Why are you not excited about it?
I'm just not. I don't know. What can I say? I just, again, I've gone back and forth. It just, first of all, we just saw him play a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, it's no offense to the Alabama people. I mean, I'd get tired of the NCAA basketball tournament if I saw the same 2 teams in the final every year. I mean, it just needs we need more teams in it, and at least the process would be built up a little bit better. We talked about that last week, but it's just I'm going to watch it. Don't get me wrong, I'll watch it, and I'll probably watch it on one of those alternative sites where you watch the coaches and all that other stuff. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I don't have a clue who's going to win. I do respect those boys out Las Vegas are pretty smart.
Yeah.
And when they make Georgia a favorite over Alabama, when they just saw 3 weeks ago, Alabama just laid it on Georgia on a neutral site.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me that they have a lot of confidence in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that, I agree with you. I think Alabama has the better quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid's pretty special, I think, Bryce Young. And he, this vaunted Georgia defense didn't look too vaunted to me against Alabama.
Yeah.
Stetson Bennett at Georgia, he's okay. He played well against Michigan, but he's more of he's steady. I don't know about making huge plays like Young. I'm not a big fan of Kirby Smart because when I do watch him on the sideline, he always seems to be angry and out of control. Mm-hmm. And I don't really like that, to be honest with you. I like somebody a little bit more calmer and things like that. I don't know. I mean, if I had to just guess, I would take. If you're going to, since I'm not for sure, and if if I had to bet this game, I would take the points. I would take Alabama and the 2.5 and 3 points. That's what I would take.
Yeah.
Saying that, I'll go Alabama 27, Georgia 24, but I have no confidence I'm right or wrong. I think it could go either way. I have no real confidence. I do think it will help Georgia the second time around after they kind of got torched by them. I do think there's a pride factor that Georgia has defensively.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if Alabama does not get Georgia's very best effort.
Well, I do believe that we won't see 41 points out of either one of them. That part would surprise me. I don't know what the over-under is on this, but I'd be surprised if it's the over, whatever it is.
Right.
But you mentioned your disinterest in this because of just it being the same teams. One of my favorite books of all time is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I would not want to read it every January.
Right. Same team, same conference.
Yeah. That does get old. I remember, what was it?
The only thing difference, they did move it north.
True.
It's like the southern migration up to Indianapolis.
There's no telling how many of interesting flags were headed up I-65 over the last few days.
That's correct.
But I'm with you on that. It does take some away.
Saying that, they do seem like the best two teams in college football. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that either. I do believe we do have the two best teams. I don't think anybody got left out or cheated or any of that kind of stuff. This is not like last year when conferences just started making up new rules to make sure they had a team in the playoffs.
These are the two best teams.
Yeah, this is
that doesn't mean it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah,
but it is I think it's the two best teams, and it's like I said, I have zero faith in who's going to win this game. Zero. I do think the more I think about it, I said 27-24 Alabama. The more I think about it, I do think, as I mentioned, Georgia will. I do think who's not motivated. It's a championship final, but you have to think those boys from Georgia after. Everybody laying the praise on them defensively.
Yeah.
Have to have learned something from that first game.
Well, and they gave up. The thing about it is Alabama had 2 long drives in that game that ended in field goals, all right? They had the interception return for a touchdown. I think the other 3 touchdowns were all big plays, like big pass plays. And so, and they did not, neither team ran the ball well at all against the other team's defense. So basically, Georgia's in the position of don't give up the big plays, and you probably win this game, especially if you get up 10-0 again. And I don't know if they can stop that because what the thing is I don't know if that's a product of Alabama's scheme against their defense or if that's just how good Bryce Young is.
Could be. He seems like he'll be a special player.
Yes.
It'll probably come down to the usual when you got 2 really good teams, close games, is who makes the big mistake.
Yeah.
Who throws the interception return, who runs a kickback, who blocks a punt. It'd probably come down to something like that. That's a game changer momentum wise. That's probably what's going to come down to.
Yeah, with that in mind, I'm actually going to take Alabama 21-10.
Okay, then I've got to switch then. If you go Alabama 21-10, I'm going to go Georgia 27-24.
That's fine.
There you go. How about that?
I did all of those fact checks for how that game was closer than it actually looked, and I don't think this one's going to be as close as the first
So
two.
you're all in on Alabama. All right, I'll go Georgia.
Okay.
I'll go Georgia.
Yeah, and I'm with you also.
I'm not pulling for Georgia. I'm not pulling for Alabama. So let's just, I'll just be blunt.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of watching.
Obviously, I'll be at some basketball games, so I hope everybody who is watching it does enjoy the game.
Obviously, the Class A tournament did not. They
didn't get the memo.
They didn't get the memo that the world stops for the NCAA finals.
Yeah, these games are supposed to be at 6 and 7:30 tonight in Metcalfe County. You guys have to stop at about 8 o'clock and wait until 11 to start again. All right. Anyway, yeah. So you're going Georgia 27-24.
Yes,
I believe Alabama is going. I just have no faith.
That's not close. That's 21-10.
Well, I go back to I actually think Georgia's defense will play better in this game, but I just do not. I think whenever we've talked about certain things before, in football, the better quarterback,
right?
In basketball, if you got the better guard,
that's right,
you're going to win. I just think that particular matchup is just way out of whack at the moment.
It does seem like it.
Yep. All right, it's a Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, the NFL football season wrapped up on Sunday, and
a wild one, wasn't it?
It was, man. What a day! I do not like the extra games. I didn't like when they added bye weeks because I guess I'm just an old curmudgeon. But I did not like the extra game. But the way that they set up the scheduling, I thought was a good way to set it up, where you had these division games against each other, and 2 or 3 of them had implications for the playoffs. You don't know how that's going to work out when you set that schedule up, a year or so in advance. But I did like that part of how they did the schedule. Instead of
they started that a couple years ago though, where the last, whether it's the week 17 or week 18, they started that a couple years ago, where the final week of the season is division rivalries.
Yeah,
where they and still. Teams kind of tanking it or whatever. There's generally something on the line and so forth. So they started that, which I thought was smart. NFL's pretty sharp.
Yeah, they are. Well, let's start with the game that was the nightcap, which was the Raiders and Chargers. And for those who don't know what could have happened if the game ended in a tie, which it's like the kind of thing that seems so unlikely when somebody says it.
No ties this year.
Yeah. Well, no, we had the Steelers and the Lions, which means that's why the Steelers are in the playoffs.
Steelers and Lions tied this year?
Yes, they did.
They did? Okay.
Yeah, so the Steelers are 9-7-1.
That's right.
But anyway, so what could have, so everybody talks about, well, if it ends in a tie, then the Chargers and Raiders both get in the playoffs, yada, yada. Well, but when the game starts, nobody says to themselves, yeah, this one might end in a tie. Well, we get down to less than a minute to go in the game, and guess what? We're tied. And it looks like the Raiders
overtime.
In overtime. And it looks like the Raiders are just going to run the clock out because they're just running the ball. And the Chargers called a timeout, which I didn't quite understand why they did it. But I don't think that's the reason the Raiders ended up kicking a field goal. I think what happened was it was like 3rd and 4, and Josh Jacobs broke off like a 13-yard run, now they're within a reasonable field goal position.
Yeah, and I think there's some misinformation out there on the internet waves and things like that.
It's shocking.
It was the Raiders, in my opinion, advantaged to win.
Yes.
If it's a tie, them and the Chargers go to the playoffs. But if it's a tie, that means the Raiders go to Kansas City.
Yes.
Which I wouldn't want to do.
Now, Kansas City's killed them this year.
If they win, they go to Cincinnati.
Which has not looked necessarily great the last few weeks.
They looked great 2 weeks ago, but last week, Joe Burrow didn't play, who's a little banged up, got a knee issue. Right. So I would rather play Cincinnati than Kansas City. So it's really to their advantage to win. That game, but I think you're right. The Chargers did call timeout, and I understand why. To be honest with you, they called timeout. He said he wanted to get some of his better defensive, kind of stop the run because he figured they was going to run too.
Yeah, they were in a nickel defense, so he wanted to get in a run package,
and it didn't work because they broke off a long enough yardage where all the Raiders had now instead of a 50-something yard field goal, it's a 47.
Yeah,
which in NFL, especially when it's indoor, that's pretty routine for those guys.
Yes. Well, and so, there was a lot of speculation after the game about the coach saying, well, we were looking at potentially going, finishing at the tie, knowing we'd both get in. But I think people misinterpreted what he was trying to say because he was saying they called the timeout, and so he really thought they were going to, what would happen is they knew they were going to run the football because
they weren't going to take a knee.
Yeah, they were going to try to win the game, but they weren't going to do anything stupid to try to win the game. They weren't going to throw a pass. They weren't going to try an outrageously long field goal. They weren't going to do anything that would allow the Chargers an opportunity to turn an interception or fumble or block kick or any of that business.
That's right.
And so I think people misunderstood what he was saying.
I agree.
And
But it was a great game, nevertheless.
It was,
the
man.
quarterback for the Chargers,
Justin Herbert.
he is unbelievably good.
Yes.
He made some throws in some of the tightest windows known to man. Mm-hmm. And I think he overcame some coaching just to get there.
Yes, he did.
Because, listen, I love it that their coach, he goes by all the new rules. He goes for 2 all the time and goes on 4th down. I love all that stuff. But daggone, they went for it on 4th and 1 from their own 18.
Yeah.
Down 3 with, I think it was late in the 3rd quarter.
Yeah, it was.
It didn't give it, and they just gave the Raiders a field goal. I mean, that didn't make any sense to me. I don't care what the book says.
There is a close enough to my goal line to make a difference on what that number should be.
That momentum, score,
a sliding percentage scale,
momentum, score, time, whatever. And I didn't understand that. And he's made some kind of unusual calls all year. The system is the system. He says he's going to be aggressive, going to go for those things. Well, that's fine. But he said, I've got a great quarterback. I'm going to let him make plays. Well, they handed the ball off. They didn't let him make a play.
Yeah, because other than that, look, he converted 4 fourth downs, I think, on the drive where they scored the tying touchdown.
He did.
And they were like all 4th and 9, 4th and 10, 4th and 11,
and he was
4th
getting
and 8.
beat up, too.
Yes. I mean, he was dodging people and throwing darts on those plays.
I'm not sure. I'm quite confident he's top 5 in the league.
Oh, yeah.
Rodgers, Mahomes, Brady, those 3, and then you can take a pick after that. I'm pretty confident he's top 5, and he's special.
He is. I tell you what, going back to the coaching decisions, there were plenty of decisions maybe you could question about the Chargers coach. That timeout is not the one that I think is the important one.
I agree.
Because of the misunderstanding of what the Raiders coach said.
I agree.
But I do think there are decisions throughout the year that guy makes that he actually, yes, you have a great quarterback, but let's not make it undue burden for him to try to win games for you.
Right.
I mean, why put the man behind the 8 ball? Just run the game effectively and then let him make plays when he needs to.
Well, they got rid of the last coach who was pretty good because of decisions. They couldn't win close games and penalties and things like that. Well,
this guy seems to fit the same bill.
That's exactly right. Now, he's younger. He appears to be a sharp guy. You know, he came from the Rams. He was the defense coordinator for McVay. He seems sharp, but maybe borderline a little bit arrogant on some of the decisions.
Sort of like McVay, maybe.
Yeah, sort of like McVay. And, maybe, chalk this up as a learning experience. The problem with a learning experience, I think coaches do get better and they can improve, is, that may have cost them a playoff run. And you put this quarterback in the playoffs, they can beat anybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'd agree. He's like Josh Allen. I think he's better than Josh Allen.
I do, too.
But he's like Josh Allen in the sense that no play is dead as long as he's still on his feet.
Right, because he's athletic, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, he looks like a guy. Well, you tell me about Lamar Jackson. Does Lamar Jackson play like he's going to play when he's 35? No.
Yeah, exactly.
This guy is 6'6", 6'5 and a half, 240, big arm. He looks like he could play till he's 40.
Yeah.
Because he can take hits. He can take all that stuff. Plus, he's elusive. Looks like to me they got somebody for a long time.
Yeah, he has the proper arm and arm mechanics to keep himself in the NFL as long as he doesn't suffer any catastrophic injuries. But yeah, so that game was a fascinating end, and then that allowed the Steelers in the game in the playoffs. And 2 weeks ago, everybody was celebrating at Heinz Field because they thought it was Ben Roethlisberger's last home game. When it might be. And
they had about a 2% chance, I think, of making the playoffs 2 weeks ago. They had to win out, and the Colts had to lose out, which they did.
Yes. They were trying to make sure the Jaguars didn't have the number 1 pick again, although they still ended up.
So, there were so many things that had to happen, and lo and behold, they took care of business and won on the Monday night game. They beat Cleveland, and then they came back against Baltimore and won in overtime. Ben Roethlisberger, he made some big plays down the stretch, and he's clearly not the player that he used to be, but he made plays. They made the field goal, and all they needed was not a tie, and they got that. And so they have, one thing about Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, boy, they're gritty, and they find ways. They just have an incredibly good culture there.
Yeah,
and they found a way to win.
Speaking of Lamar Jackson, he didn't play the last 4 weeks, is it?
He probably missed half the games this year. He probably missed 8 games.
I mean, and look, if you look, I think at the first 2 or 3 games of the season, I mean, it looked like he had turned another curve and he was about to be, the next level of quarterback. And the COVID issues.
Let me tell you something. It's not, and plus he turned down. Remember, he has no agent.
Yes.
He turned down at the beginning of the year, off season. He turned down about $40 million a year extension.
Yeah.
$40 million a year. And listen, I love Lamar. Because I'm a big Louisville fan. And I like who Lamar is. But I tell you what, I don't think it's automatic that you give somebody like that $40-something million a year for 5 years. I don't think it's automatic.
Yeah. And this year, that's what I was going to say, is how much do you think he has hurt his stock and future with how this season has gone? And
I don't think it helped him. I think he's going to get paid.
Yes.
But I think there's a but there.
Yes, there is. Yeah, because
you got to be available, right?
Yes, exactly. That's all. That the number one thing is you've got to be available. There are lots of quarterbacks in the NFL who are nowhere near as good as Lamar Jackson, but they're available, and they are on rosters, and some of them are starters.
Right.
And they stay on rosters, and sometimes they stay starters because they're always available. And, people, I think, sometimes forget that. Well, why is so-and-so a starting quarterback in the NFL? Well, because he's there, and he doesn't get hurt, and he doesn't miss games, and he shows up every day, and he doesn't cause a whole lot of problems, and they just build a team, and they hope that guy can get them over the hump.
Right.
I mean, it happens all the time. I guess they're kind of two different quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, and Lamar causes no trouble. But
he doesn't cause any trouble.
But health-wise, it's this is not a good year for him.
No, some of his decision-making this year has been in the what were you thinking, and you need to get some people to give you some advice, a little better advice, I would say. That starts maybe with the contract extension and some of his other health-related decisions during the course of the season. So I'm with you. He's not done, but this year may have blunted his future just a little bit.
Good. We'll see. And then we got the Colts.
Yeah, we got the Colts.
Who look like a legitimate, serious contender a couple weeks ago. I mean, they ran the ball. Defense was good. The quarterback was okay. Mm-hmm. And then
he was available.
Carson Wentz was not available last week until Sunday because he was out because of COVID.
Yep.
And came back and basically stunk against the Raiders and lost a home game to the Raiders. Mm-hmm. And then all they had to do is go to Jacksonville, who's horrible. Mm-hmm. I think had won one game all year and had gotten blown out the week before by New England.
Yeah, was it 50-10, I think, the week before?
And not only did they not beat Jacksonville dominated the game.
Yeah. I mean, they scored all of 11 points in the game, and that was probably by
And something's weird about the Colts. They haven't beat Jacksonville since 2014. That is so – it's so weird. It's not like –
And Jacksonville has not been good during that time, really.
They had one good run, really, so that's – but, I think the Carson Wentz is – there's a lot of questions in Indianapolis about do they have the right quarterback. I mean, they have ridden Jonathan Taylor, the running back, and their offensive line and defense, and good coaching, I think, for most of the year. But I don't know. Does Carson Wentz, did he play better this year than Phillip Rivers did for him the year before? I don't think
he did.
Not much difference, was it?
No, well, and look, the reason the Titans actually have the number 1 seed, they've won games. But let's think back to that meeting with the Colts, where the Colts were killing them, and they were dead in the water, and Carson Wentz threw the interception basically in his own end zone.
Yeah.
And that let the Titans back in that game, and they eventually won it. And, I mean, that was they were really struggling at that particular point, the Titans were. And from then, they turned things around.
Yep.
No Derrick Henry. They found serviceable players. They have a quarterback who can make the plays you need him to make, and he doesn't really do a whole bunch of stupid stuff, and he's available.
And he makes plays with his legs, too.
Yes, he does. I mean, he's just a good, smart quarterback. He's one of those guys that people will call him a game manager, and that's fine because the Titans do everything else so well that they don't need a Justin Herbert.
Well, that's what they needed Carson Wentz to do.
Yes.
But occasionally, even your game manager has to win a football game for you.
True, which Carson Wentz apparently can't do.
He
can lose them.
He was the MVP of the year 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's 4 years ago. He's MVP.
Yeah.
But, man, I don't know if it's confidence. I have no idea what has happened. But, tough sledding in Indianapolis because, they were pretty I think their percentage I saw 2 weeks ago was at they were like at 80-some% to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And they go from 87% to make it to they're home.
Yeah, I mean, basically they were playing two teams they should have beaten in the next 2 weeks, and the percentage chance of them losing those games were very low. And, man, but then on the flip side of that, let's look at the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders may actually be better than we realize.
Oh, I'm sure they are. They've overcome more than anybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look, Waller, their leading receiver, really, he's missed half the season. But
injury and COVID.
Yeah.
And we always talk about these players coming back from COVID. It seems routine. It's not always routine for all of them.
No.
He really, really had a hard time with it.
Yes, he did.
So he's missed with injury and, his conditioning really took a big hit. They also lost their coach.
Yep.
They also lost their number one draft pick, Henry Ruggs, in the tragic wreck.
Yeah.
So and it seemed like they hired a coach within who's done a good job, but it seemed like the real face of the franchise is Derek Carr.
Yes.
And he's just been upfront. He's been honest. Been incredible leadership ability. You're talking about somebody whose reputation has just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
The respect that I think the league has now of the job that he's done.
He may be the best quarterback at throwing a deep ball and getting a pass interference call, though.
Well, he got a questionable one other night.
He did indeed.
But he's done a great job. And the Raiders, boy, you're talking about gritty and tough. They fit that category.
Well, okay, let's talk about the playoffs a little bit real quick. Okay.
All right.
The first game, I think I have this in the right order. Anyway, the first game is the Raiders and the Bengals next Saturday at 3. Well, this coming Saturday at 3:30. I think.
Quick turnaround for the Raiders.
It is indeed, and I'm telling you, I would have 2 weeks ago. I'd have said the Raiders have no chance in this game, but right now, I mean they're a little bit scary if you're hosting them.
They definitely have a chance.
Yes,
definitely. Now, do I like Cincinnati? I like Joe Burrow and those guys. I really do. But, he came out of that last game with a slight knee injury. The Raiders I'm a big fan of teams going into the playoffs in football hot.
Yes. With
these gritty wins like that. I think in the NFL, in particular, it's a big, big deal. Cincinnati basically took last week off.
Yeah, they did.
They rested a lot of players. I understand resting Burrow because he was slightly hurt. And it is a tough call sometimes, but again, I think Cincinnati overall is better.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised to see the Raiders continue on this magical journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I'd say the Bengals definitely have the best player in the game in Chase. I mean, that dude is just incredible.
And Burrow.
Yeah, and Burrow. I mean, but the Raiders are just a surprising team.
They are.
And then we have the Patriots and the Bills.
For a third time.
For a third time. Now, again, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd have said the Patriots were the favorite to win this. But they've just not looked as good.
Well, Mac Jones says he looks like he's played more football games this year than he's ever played in his life.
True. That's true.
This will be his 18th game.
Yeah.
And he's had a really good rookie year. But it sort of looks like he's hit a little bit of a wall.
Yeah.
Mentally or whatever. It'd be tough for the Patriots to go up there. I never count Bill Belichick out. And Buffalo is... they're good, but it's not like they're blowing teams out consistently either. But I think Buffalo will be a pretty strong favorite in terms of, I don't know how many the point spread, but I'd be surprised to see New England win.
Yeah, and then we have the Eagles at the Buccaneers. I don't even know how the Eagles made the playoffs.
I don't like what the Eagles did. I understand resting, but they rested everybody. They just pretty much took the week off. And they play... Eagles play who now?
The Buccaneers.
I'm major Tom Brady camp on this one. I don't see those boys losing to Philadelphia.
Yeah, and then I think the most
that's the most confident pick I'll have this week.
I was going to say I think the most intriguing game is the 49ers and Cowboys. It's at the Cowboys.
I do too. Now Dallas is coming in pretty. I mean, that was pretty. I know they played a lot of the Philadelphia backups, but they put on a pretty good performance. I like that. And San Francisco's a great comeback against the Rams.
Yep.
Dallas, surprisingly, if you've paid attention to Dallas the last 3 years, they're not the greatest home team in the world.
No, they're actually better on the road.
They really are. I wouldn't be surprised to see San Francisco beat Dallas.
Well, and I tell you what, they're in this case in the coaching matchup. I have faith that Kyle Shanahan will find about 20 different ways to get Deebo Samuel the ball, and he's just such a tough matchup for everyone. And I think that's kind of a fascinating deal. Now, with the Cowboys, sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not good, and we just don't know which week it's going to be for them.
Fair.
Then we have the Steelers at the Chiefs. I hope Ben Roethlisberger enjoys his last playoff game.
I just don't think the Steelers can score enough points to beat the Chiefs.
No, I don't either. And I don't. Their defense is probably decent this year, but it's probably not that good.
Well, they got a good defensive lineman.
They do, yeah. I mean, the Steelers always have solid defense, and Mike Tomlin.
Mr. Watt tied the record, 22.5 sacks.
Yes, that was held by Michael Strahan, I believe
correct.
it was. And then the last game is the Cardinals and Rams, and these are two teams I'm not sure what to think of either one of them, despite the fact that they're records.
I'll take the Rams. I'm not sold on the Murray. I mean, he's fine. He's a good player, but I'm not sold on Arizona. I mean, obviously they got a good team, good record, but I'll take the Rams.
Yeah, they have really kind of struggled the last 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, the Cardinals were 8-1, I think they were, and they went 3-5 to finish the season. I think it is.
Yeah, they did beat Dallas.
They did beat Dallas. That was a good win for them. So I'd take the Rams. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl, John?
That's a good question. Tough one.
Yeah,
tough one. I do care about the NFL. I like the NFL a lot, but picking who's going to win, I don't. Do I think Green Bay's going to win? I mean, they got the home field advantage, but something about Green Bay makes me. I'm a little reluctant about them defensively. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't blow out anybody either. You know, normally great teams occasionally blow out teams.
Yeah,
they never do that. I think if I said you got to put down $100 on a team, I think the team that I think has the best chance is Kansas City.
Yeah, I would probably go with you on that. Now, I will say this: based on what the Titans have done in terms of getting,
I hope Tennessee does.
Well, getting Foreman going. That means
Derrick Henry's coming back.
He will be back, but that means that they don't have to give him the ball 25 or 30 times a game. Now they have two guys that they can work off of, and I think their defense has actually played pretty well, which is a little bit surprising. I think they create a lot of matchup nightmares for people, but I don't. But in terms of if I got to pick somebody who's going to go out there and win me a game, I still probably pick Patrick Mahomes just because he's done it so many times.
Right.
And then on the other side, on the NFC side, the thing is Aaron Rodgers has not actually won at Lambeau Field in the playoffs. He's struggled at home.
Well, I mean, he's won games,
but not the NFC Championship games.
Okay, yeah,
right?
Yeah, he's won games there.
Yeah. So it's just not as good as you would think it used to. Nobody went to Green Bay and beat them.
Well, yeah, Tampa did last year.
Well, and that's it. These days, that mystique is gone for the Packers.
Right. I mean, they're quality team. I mean, they're quality. They got a great rushing attack. Probably got the best quarterback in football.
Yeah.
But just something about them. I'm a little reluctant to say, I think Green Bay's going to win.
You know what? I would not be the least bit shocked if the 49ers are back in the Super Bowl.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Real quick, let's talk a little college basketball. The WKU women, they're on a roll at the moment.
Yeah, they have really. I think they've won. I don't know, 6 in a row, close 5, 6 in a row, maybe. And man, they've got Meryl Abdulgawad is probably the best player in the conference. I mean, she's averaging 19.5 points a game, 11 a game. Now she's a senior, but her averages jumped from 10 to 19.
Yeah,
I mean, she's had an incredible year, and they've got 3 dynamic freshman.
Yeah. It's
Maya Meredith from Independence, Kentucky Scott High School. She's averaged 14. The little guard from California, Alexis Mead, is averaging 11 a game. They are fun. I mean, fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because they can flat score in a lot of different ways, and they bring some serious different defenses. They're fun to watch. They're the most enjoyable team I've watched in a long time.
Yeah, this was last year. They
couldn't score last year.
Yeah, these freshmen have filled that gap that they had.
And Abdulgawad has massively improved. It's rare that a 4-year starter improves that much from their junior to senior year, and she really has.
I think we seem to continue to forget about all the disruption last year, practices and all that kind of stuff. And so everybody is kind of a year behind if you were in school last year in terms of probably the amount of training and practice you would have gotten and the systems and all that kind of stuff.
They got 2 more games on the road this week. They go to Rice and they go to North Texas, and they'll be back for some home games. Yeah. They're fun to watch. I encourage people to go down there if you get a chance.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're rolling right along. Any other college basketball stuff that kind of stands out to you?
Well, Kentucky and men split. Tough loss at LSU, but they lost Wheeler, their point guard. You know, it's understandable to lose, and then they came back and destroyed not a very good Georgia team, but they look good doing it.
Yeah. And then the Cardinals, they
split too.
Yeah.
They beat somebody at home. I think it's Wake Forest, maybe. I don't know. And then lost to Florida State on the road.
Yeah.
Not unusual. Florida State's like 8-1 at home. Mm-hmm. Western men got a good win Saturday as well.
Yep. And then one of the things I meant to mention in the first segment was a couple of fourth region related games. Last Monday, Warren Central boys played Bowling Green and really kind of wore them out.
Yeah, they put up 60 in the first half, I think, against them.
The final was like, I think, 91-68 or 91-78, something like that.
Made an ungodly amount of threes.
Yes. I think this may be Coach Unseld's best team. Now, he doesn't have his best players on this team, but in terms of like interchangeability and all these different guys he can come off the bench that can score,
it's pretty impressive
shoot.
Since they're mainly juniors.
Yeah, I mean, so they turned into a pretty scary team pretty quickly and put a stamp last week, I think, on they're the team to beat in the fourth region. They've not played Greenwood yet, but Bowling Green did beat Greenwood the week before that. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. Those three teams, I think, are still at the top. The Warren Central looks pretty good. And then the Bowling Green girls on Saturday beat Bullitt East, which was the AP number 2 team in the state, and looked real good doing it.
Yeah, Bullitt East is for real, too. They played a big-time schedule, and Bowling Green thumped them.
Yeah, they were all over them from the get-go. I think they started the game like up 9-0 or 11-0.
And Bullitt East brought their players, too.
Yes.
It's not like they left half of them home.
No, their whole team was there. But Lynn Kayla James opened. I think she had 3 3-pointers open the game. And then Sanaya Shelton can just do whatever she wants whenever. I mean, basically, Coach had he doesn't keep her on a leash, but he can cut her loose at any time, and nobody can really guard her.
And Meadow Tisdale is a Division I player. No, they're going to be a very difficult team to beat in the region.
Yeah.
I mean, I think their goal is to win a region, but they've probably got some.
Their ambitions may be greater.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, because right now I think they lost to Sacred Heart by 7 during the Christmas break. So it's going to be interesting. They put designs on the end of the season.
Yep.
All right, it's a Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.